Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Wisdom of the Ancient Greeks. Today we're going to be going over the wisdom of the ancient Greeks. We're going to see some, this is one world of wisdom. So we're going to be looking over some of the wisdom of the ancient Greeks, compiled by Mel Thompson. It's from Oxford Press. This is 2002, published. Of course, this is some ancient stuff, so we're going to go through the contents really quick. The preface, the key dates of the writers. Then we're going to look at wisdom, philosophy, and learning, friendship, love, and passion, moderation and diligence, courage, fate, and suffering, morality, beauty, art, and happiness, justice, and politics. Give me one moment here, guys. Let me make sure I get the sound proper. And yes, indeed. We look like we're here. Check. Okay. Perceptions of reality and the immortal realm. And then the translations used and acknowledgements. So let's get to it. Okay, preface. Oops, all right. It is quite impossible to sum up in a few words the enormous wealth of epic poetry, drama, and philosophy that has come down to us from ancient Greece. It has provided inspiration for both rational thought and artistic creativity from one generation to the next within Western culture. The wisdom of ancient Greece combined passion, a raw appreciation of human emotions, and the tragedy of a life driven by them, with the most rigorous and careful analysis of ideas. Greek drama probed every recess of human frailty, exposing the agony of self-doubt and the sense of injustice in the world, and in doing so, elevated language as never before. That wisdom was also the source of science, philosophy, psychology, and politics as we know them today. And the language in which we explore these subjects depends, to a great extent, on Greek terms. The passages included in this anthology can therefore represent no more than a personal choice selected from this vast literature. Whether poetry, drama, philosophy, they seek to address the key issues of human life and death, its meaning, and its place within the universe. Powerful stuff. Those who explore the art and literature of ancient Greece and set them within the context of Western culture tend to resort to superlatives, for it is difficult to overestimate the achievements of that period. Below you will find just a few such comments included here to set the context for the passages of wisdom that follow. And before we go on with this, I want to see if there's anyone that's still here with us in the chat. If you could just leave a like or a hello or anything like that. I don't know if anyone else is here. We had a little technical difficulties getting started, but we're up and running, it seems, here. And I'd just like to verify, if we could, from the chat that we got good sound and good video flowing on the YouTube. All right, beautiful. Got a little bit of a delay, so I guess it takes a while. Yes, indeed, it is a bit of, okay, it is, cool. All right, let's continue. He came at the end of the creative period in Greek thought, and after his death. It was 2,000 years before the world produced any philosopher who could be regarded approximately his equal. And that's Bertrand Russell on Aristotle. These dialogues are among the world's great literature. In addition to containing some of the best philosophy ever produced, they are beautifully written. Many language scholars think they contain the finest of all Greek prose. And that's on Plato's Dialogues. Okay, so we could go on and on about how great this is. We have the ones here about, who's this? Yeah, let's read about these. Are all good. The ancient philosophers created and laid much of the groundwork for later philosophical debate in the fields of ontology, epistemology, logic, ethics, and political philosophy. Now let's look at this for a second here. We're talking about ancient philosophers, right? And we're just now being able to use the dreams they had of ontology, of relating meaning to the information, to the data, and to the signs as we studied in semiotics. And that's what we see coming to fruition in artificial intelligence, is that ontology mapping that started with the philosophers of ancient Greece. The epistemology that we discussed too in another episode we did here about the meaning of knowledge, how we come to know it, and how we know what it is. Logic. Ethics. So we get to the pure mathematics, the ethics, the pure humanist, and political philosophy. They also established the crucial features of philosophical method, open-mindedness about the agenda of problems, and rational progress through argument and debate. Of course, progress means to move forward through argument and debate, and that's rational progress. The ratio measured, right? The person of Socrates became and has remained ever since so powerful an icon for the life of moral scrutiny that it is his name that is used to mark this watershed in the history of philosophy. In the century or so that followed his death, many schools looked back to him as the living embodiment of philosophy and sought the principles of his life and thought in philosophical theory. Almost everything about Homer is debatable, except the centrality to ancient Greek culture of the two epics connected with his name, the Iliad and the Odyssey, and thus their importance for Western civilization as a whole. The sophistication and polish of the writing gave the Homeric narratives universal appeal. They remain part of the Greek consciousness throughout Greek history and have retained their appeal today. One reason for this is that their focus of interest is always human. The Olympian gods, when they appear, are treated as beings with distinctly human frailties. They are often less admirable than the men and women whose fates they govern. That's an interesting concept. They are often less admirable than the men and women whose fates they govern. Sound familiar? Human beings, by contrast, are enlarged rather than diminished, even when they are shown behaving badly. All right. From a period of about 200 years, beginning in the late 500s BC, Athens was the center of Greek culture. The height of this period, from 461 to 431 BC, is often called the Golden Age. During this period, largely as a result of the emergence of democracy, literature flourished. Drama, in the form of tragedy, became the most important literary form. Hey, it's Silly Wabbit. Haven't seen you in a while, man. How's it going? Good to see you here. If I could take just a brief pause here I want to mention to Silly Wabbit that Paul Enslaved got his channel banned for a week because I don't know what happened, but it was right when he had Audit Them on there, and I had them perform 2 live audits, and it was like just epic stuff live, and then next day his channel's banned. I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but he has a backup channel. It's called Proper Motivation. Proper Instruction Motivates Performance. PIMP for short. So yeah, check that one out. All right, so I'll put a link in the chat later on for that. Yeah, AT does some incredible audits, man. I mean, it's just, but on that show was great because it was almost like he had a live audience for doing it. I've never seen anything like it. I restreamed it here on this channel, and I could always restream it another time. Just get out the popcorn and milk duds because it's just epic. It was serendipitous. The synchronicity, everything was great. Yeah, proper instructions motivates people. All right, I'm gonna put the link in here real quick, guys. Bear with me 1 second while I pull it up. And just want to grab it here from the good old YouTube direct link so I don't type it in wrong. Pimp. There it is. Proper instruction motivates people. I'm going to share it. And I'm going to bring it back here and pop it in our chat. And here it comes. All right. Yeah, everyone subscribe to that channel there. It's a lot more mellow than his other channel, I'll say that. So if the other one seemed a little bit edgy, this one's a little shorter format, a little smaller panels. Seems pretty good. No, I needed a break for a second there, silly wabbit. I just wanted to take a break there to go on to that. Let's get back to this. I kind of want to see where we are. We're still reading just people talking about how great this is, so we're actually just going to get moving on here. The best ones were the first ones they put, of course. This is what I want to get into here. Let's look at some of the key dates here of the writers included in this anthology we're about to review. Homer. That was around the 8th century BC. So remember, we're counting backwards up to 0. Aesop, one of my favorites, 6th century. Aeschylus. Gosh, I hate my speaking Greek. Sophocles, 496 to 405. Protagoras. Euripides, 480 to 406. Socrates. So, all right, I'm not going to say these words. I'm not that good at speaking Greek, but you can see here the Cynics from the mid-4th century BC, right? So as we can see here, the Plotinus and the Epictetus were the most recent ones. Epicurus, here we go, he is. Okay. No, AD stands for Annos Domini, in the year of the Lord. So it means after he came. So they're just general things. They use different terminology now because, of course you can't use words like Christ. It's politically incorrect. So they use different terminology now. I forget what they use. But BC is before Christ. AD is Annos Domini, or year of the Lord. All right. But we're not there yet in AD. So we're going to stick right here with the old the BC stuff. So remember, we're counting backwards like negative numbers. So the bigger the number, the older it is. All right. Wisdom, philosophy, and learning. Why, my good sir, must not the wisest appear more beautiful? It's Plato. Pretty good stuff, huh? Philosophy does not promise to secure for a man any external thing. If it did, it would take on something outside its proper subject matter. For, as wood is the material of the carpenter, and bronze that of the sculptor, so the subject matter of the art of life is each person's own life. If the intellect is divine compared with man, the life of the intellect must be divine compared with the life of a human being. And we ought not to listen to those who warn us that man should think the thoughts of man, or mortal thoughts fit mortal minds, but we ought, so far as in us lies, to put on immortality, and to do all that we can to live in conformity with the highest that is in us. For even if it is small in bulk, in power, and preciousness, it far excels all the rest. Indeed, it would seem that this is the true self of the individual, since it is the authoritative and better part of him. That's Aristotle, Ethics. Danger of too much philosophy. For philosophy, Socrates is a charming thing if a man has to do with it moderately in his younger days. But if he continues to spend his time on it too long, it is ruin to any man. So we're going to keep this short, guys. However well endowed one may be, if one philosophizes, the British, far on into life, one must needs finds oneself ignorant. I don't know how to read this here. However well endowed one may be, this might be a typo. However well endowed one may be, if one philosophizes far on into life, one must needs find oneself ignorant of everything that ought to be familiar to the man who would be a thorough gentleman and make a good figure in the world. For such people are shown to be ignorant of the laws of their city, and the terms of which to be used in negotiating agreements with their fellows in private or in public affairs, and of human pleasures and desires, and in short, to be utterly inexperienced of men's characters. So when they enter upon any private or public business, they make themselves ridiculous. Just as, on the other hand, I suppose, when public men engage in your studies and discussions, they are quite ridiculous. And that's Plato, and from an argument of Callicles. All right, so I guess what he's getting at here is trying to say that the let's see here. Yeah, it's sorry, I had a little technical difficulty there. I think we're back online. Are we back there? All right, good. All right, so let's see what we had here. See, all right. All right, let's see what we got here. So let's see who this is. Doesn't say who that is. It's Aristotle? Doesn't look like him. It could be. All right, so to know is to remember. Okay, so know is to remember. Seeing then that the soul is immortal and has been born many times and has beheld all things both in this world and in the nether realms, she has acquired knowledge of all and everything, so that it is no wonder that she would be able to recollect all that she knew before about virtue and other things. For as all nature is akin, and the soul has learned all things, there's no reason why we should not, by remembering but one single thing, an act which men call learning, discover everything else. If we have courage and faint not in the search, since it would seem research and learning are wholly recollection. Think about that. To know is to remember. The soul's immortal, has been born many times, beheld many things in this world and in the nether realms. She has acquired the knowledge of all and everything. So it's no wonder that she should be able to recollect all that she knew before about virtue and other things. For as all nature is akin, the soul has learned all things. There's no reason why we should not, by remembering but one single thing, an act which men call learning, discover everything else. So it's the process of learning that brings us to the complete knowledge that's already there. Interesting concept there from Plato. Much undiluted wine. Oh, Silly Wabbit, heading out. Okay, yes, Silly Wabbit, we'll catch you. This is a good one to re-listen. I'll edit out the dead spot I had with the audio too. Okay, much undiluted wine is an enemy of properly performing one's duties, for it confounds one's mind, in which man's ability to reason is situated. It is not easy for the person who strives for great things to accomplish what he attempts, unless he enters upon a sober and careful life. Yep. So it's all about recollection, right? To recall is key to learning. I like this. Too much undiluted wine. I guess they like the sangria there in Greece. So anything like Spanish wine, I can understand why. All right. Never too late to learn. Perhaps you will allow me to give you a piece of advice. I tell you, gentlemen and gentle ladies, this is confidential, that we ought all alike to seek out the best teacher we can find. First for ourselves, for we need one, and then for our boys, sparing neither expense nor anything else we can do, but to leave ourselves as we now are. This I do not advise. And if anyone makes fun of us for seeing fit to go to school at our time of life, I think we should appeal to Homer, who said that shame is no good mate for the needy man. Shame is no good mate for the needy man. I don't think Homer was Australian. So let us not mind what anyone may say, but join together in arranging for our own and the boys' tuition. So I guess he's doing a fundraiser here for his kids' college fund. In a philosophical debate, he gains most who is defeated, since he learns most. That's from Epicurus. All right, let's continue here. On education. For in modern times, there are opposing views about the tasks to be set, for there are no generally accepted assumptions about what the young should learn, either a virtue or for the best life. Nor yet is it clear whether their education ought to be conducted with more concern for the intellect than for the character of the soul. The problem has been complicated by the education which we see actually given. And it is by no means certain whether training should be directed at things useful in life, or at those conducive to virtue, or at exceptional accomplishments. Three things here. We have the servile, the useful things in life conducive to virtue, and exceptional accomplishments. Wow. On debating these, to defend either a thesis or a definition, you should first work out an attack on it for yourself. For it is clear that it is those things on the basis of which questioners refute that the theses that you should oppose. Let me read that one more time. For it is clear that it is those things on the basis of which questioners refute these theses that you should oppose. So it's the things on the basis which questioners refute your theses you should oppose. Avoid defending an unacceptable thesis. Unacceptable could have two meanings. It might mean either a thesis from which absurdities follow. An example, if someone were to say that all things move or that nothing does. Or it might mean that what a bad character would choose and what is contrary to our wishes. Example given is that pleasure is good or that doing wrong is better than suffering it. Okay? So unacceptable thesis, right? Either a thesis which absurdities follow, right? Or One, or it might mean what a bad character would choose, what a bad character would choose and was contrary to our wishes. So that's the two things. Absurdities would follow, or what a bad character would choose, and what is contrary to our wishes. So those are unacceptable theses, right? Meanings of them. For people will take you to be saying what you think, not defending something for the sake of argument, and hate you. That's worth reading again from Aristotle. For people will take you to be saying what you think, not defending something for the sake of argument, and hate you. So that's interesting there, not defending something for the sake of argument and hate you. So interesting point there when you're dealing with argument, I guess. Nice picture here. Must be in Greece, cave in Greece. Oh, looks like fun. In the world of knowledge, the last thing to be perceived, and only with great difficulty, is the essential form of goodness. Once it is perceived, the conclusion must follow that, for all things, this is the cause of whatever is right and good. In the visible world, it gives birth to light and to the Lord of light, while it is itself sovereign in the intelligible world and the parent of intelligence and truth. Without having had a vision of this form, no one can act with wisdom, either in his own life or in matters of state. And that was from Plato, The Republic. See, the form of goodness. Once it's perceived, the conclusion must follow that, for all things, this is the cause of whatever is right and good. In the visible world, it gives birth to light and to the Lord of light, while it is itself sovereign in the intelligible world and a parent of intelligence and truth. That's the form of goodness. Intelligence and truth. Without having had a vision of this form, the form of goodness, no one can act with wisdom, either in his own life or in matters of state. And it will be the business of reason to rule with the wisdom and forethought on behalf of the entire soul, while the spirited element ought to act as its subordinate ally. The two will be brought into accord by that combination of mental and bodily training, which will tune up one string of the instrument and relax the other, nourishing the reasoning part on the study of noble literature and allying the other's wildness by harmony and rhythm. Thus, reason to rule with wisdom and forethought on behalf of the soul. The spirited element ought to act as its subordinate ally. Interesting. So let's continue here. Audit them, nailed it. Yeah, for sure. That was the best live audit ever. Perception and reality. It is not things in themselves that trouble us, but our opinion of things. On being wise. Sheriff went to Delphi and boldly asked the oracle to tell him whether anyone was wiser than I, Socrates, was. And the Pythian prophetess answered that there was no man wiser. Why do I mention this? Because I am going to explain to you why I have such an evil name. When I heard the answer, I said to myself, what can the god mean? And what is the interpretation of his riddle? For I know that I have no wisdom, small or great. After long perplexity, I thought of a method of trying the question. I reflected that if I could only find a man wiser than myself, then I might go to the god with a refutation in hand. Accordingly, I went to one who had the reputation of wisdom, and observed him. His name I need not mention. He was a politician. And in the process of examining him and talking with him, this, men of Athens, was what I found. I could not help thinking that he was not really wise, although he was thought wise by many, and still wiser by himself. And thereupon I tried to explain to him that he thought himself wise, but was not really wise. And the consequence was that he hated me, and his enmity was shared by several who were present and heard me. So I left him, saying to myself as I went away, well, although I do not suppose that either of us knows anything really worth knowing, I am at least wiser than this fellow, for he knows nothing, and thinks that he knows. I neither know nor think that I know. In this one little point, then, I seem to have the advantage of him. Then I went to another who had still higher pretensions to wisdom, and my conclusion was exactly the same. Whereupon I made another enemy of him, and of many others beside him. The result of my mission was just this. I found that men most in repute were nearly the most foolish, and that others less esteemed were really closer to wisdom. He, O men, is the wisest who, like Socrates, knows that his wisdom is in truth worth nothing. Wow, that's from Plato, Apology, from his account of Socrates' apology before the court in Athens. Some more nice Greek art there. It looks like a mosaic. Wow. All right. We think that knowledge and expertise belong rather to skill than to experience, and we assume that the skilled are wiser than the experienced, and that it is more in connection with knowledge that wisdom is associated with anything. And the reason for this is that the skilled know the cause, whereas the experienced do not. For the experienced know the that, but not the because, whereas the skilled have a grasp of the because, the cause. That is why in each field designers are thought more prestigious and to have more knowledge than craftsmen, and to be wiser in that they know the causes for what is being done. The assumption is that it is not being practical that makes them wiser, but their possession of an account and their grasp of their causes, of the causes. And in general, the ability to teach is a distinguishing mark between the knowledgeable and the ignorant man. And that is why we think that skill is rather a form of knowledge than experience. For the skilled can, whereas the merely experienced cannot teach. How many times have you heard this misquoted by Aristotle? The skilled can, whereas the merely experienced cannot teach. You know, I've also heard this it's also retranslated as those who can do, those who understand teach. And here it's phrased a little bit differently, but the same. Now it's been totally misconstrued by saying those who can't do teach, which is totally wrong. It's this right here. The skilled can, whereas the merely experienced cannot teach. So let's continue here. So doers aren't necessarily able to teach, and teachers can do and teach. Of the relation of soul and body. If, to do what? To do what? To do whatever you're doing here. To do means the action. There's a cause and there's an action. If you just do the action, you get experience. If you know the cause and the action, you have knowledge, right? You have skill. All right. So that's the distinction there of the do. If there's any of the functions or affections of the soul which is peculiar to it, it will be possible for it to be separated from the body. But if there is nothing peculiar to it, it will not be separable. It seems that all the affections of the soul involve the body: passion, gentleness, fear, pity, confidence, and further, joy, and both loving and hating. For at the same time as these, the body is affected in a certain way. If this is so, it is clear that the affections of the soul are principles involving matter. Hence, their definitions are such as being angry is a particular movement of a body of such, and such a kind, or a part or potentiality of it, as a result of this thing, and for the sake of that. And for the reasons an inquiry concerning the soul is at once the province of the student of nature. But the student of nature and the dialectician would define each of these differently. Example given, what anger is. For the latter would define it as a desire for retaliation or something of that sort. The former as the boiling of the blood and hot stuff round the heart. Between the student of nature and the dialectician. The dialectician sees anger as a desire for retaliation or something of that sort. And if you're a student of nature, it's the boiling of the blood and hot stuff around the heart. Of these, one gives the matter. The other, wow, that's a nice one there. Form and principle. For this is the principle of the thing, but it must be in a matter of such and such a kind, if it is to be. So we get a little interrupted with this beautiful artwork here. Let's take a look at this for a second. Looks like that belongs on a ceiling. All right. Let me read this last sentence now in its entirety. All right, so of these, we're talking about student of nature and the student of the dialectician, student of the dialectic. The one gives the matter, the other, the form and principle. For this is the principle of the thing, but it must be in a matter of such and such a kind, if it is to be. So we need form and principle. When you buy victuals and liquors, you can carry them off from the dealer or merchant in separate vessels. And before you take them into your body by drinking or eating, you can lay them by in your house and take the advice of an expert whom you call in as to what is fit to eat or drink and what is not, and how much you should take and when, so that in this purchase the risk is not serious. But you cannot carry away doctrines in a separate vessel. You are compelled, when you have handed over the price, to take the doctrine in your very soul by learning it, and so to depart either an injured or benefited man. Serious shit there, dogma free, right? Doctrines. Cannot carry away doctrines in a separate vessel. You are compelled, when you have handed over the price, to take the doctrine in your very soul by learning it, remembering it, and so to depart either an injured or a benefited man. Sistine Chapel. It didn't look like the Sistine Chapel. Something Greek in Greece. It's a Greek art. But who knows? The wise can learn a great deal from enemies. Take a proverb like, safety lies in circumspection. You don't learn the truth of that You don't learn the truth of that from your friends. You learn it from your enemies. And pretty quickly, too. It wasn't from their friends that cities learned to perfect their fortifications and build up their navies. It was from their enemies. Yet It's only through having learnt this lesson that they can protect their children, their homes, and their property. Safety lies in circumspection. You can learn a great deal from enemies. Okay, so on the impossibility of saying that nothing you say is true. Okay, here we go. Metaphysics. Aristotle. Finally, if nothing can be truly asserted, even the following claim would be false. The claim that there is no true assertion. And if there is a true assertion, this is a refutation of what is pretended by the raisers of these objections, being, as they are, comprehensive eliminators of all debate. So if you have a true assertion, if there is a true assertion, this is a refutation of what is pretended by the raisers of these objections, being they are the comprehensive eliminators of all debate. Do you get it? So true assertion, it's a refutation of what is pretended by the raisers of these objections, right? So it's I guess the whole thing is to be eliminators of debate. On Plato's notion of the good. The highest object of knowledge is the essential nature of the good, from which everything that is good and right derives its value for us. Without that knowledge, to know everything else, however well, would be of no value to us, just as it is of no use to possess anything without getting the good of it. What advantage can there be in possessing everything except what is good, or in understanding everything else while of the good and desirable we know nothing? A thing, then, that every soul pursues as an end of all her actions, dimly divining its existence, but perplexed and unable to grasp its nature with the same clearness and assurance as in dealing with other things, and so missing whatever value those other things might have. A thing of such supreme importance is not a matter about which those chosen guardians of the whole fortunes of our commonwealth can be left in the dark. So, the highest object of knowledge is the essential nature of the good, from which everything that is good and right derives its value from us. So that's the first object, the highest object of knowledge, is the essential nature of the good. So, every soul pursues as end to all her actions, dimly divining its existence, but perplexed and unable to grasp its nature with the same clearness. So, which is chosen guardians of the whole fortunes. Okay, yeah, could be left in the dark. So pretty good stuff. Has he defined the good? Well, that's the essential nature of the good. So it's a capital G here, from which everything that is good and right derives its value for us. So if we're deriving a value, then it's good. Without that knowledge, to know everything else, however well, would be of no value to us. So the essential nature of the good, right, is things that are of value for us. Qualities like ready understanding, a good memory, sagacity, quickness, together with a high-spirited, generous temper, are seldom combined with willingness to live a quiet life of sober constancy. Keen wits are apt to lose all steadiness and to veer about in every direction. On the other hand, the steady, reliable characters, whose impassivity is proof against the perils of war, are equally proof against insurrection. Confronted with intellectual work, they become comatose and do nothing but yawn. That's a good one there. Friendship, love, and passion. Friendship. The noble man is chiefly concerned with wisdom and friendship. Of these, the former is a mortal good, the latter and immortal. That's from Epicurus. One person wants to get possession of horses, another dogs, another money, and another distinctions. Of these things I reckon little, but for the possession of friends I have quite a passionate longing. That's Plato. When friends who have quarreled come together, meet face to face, they have to think of only one thing, what they came for, nothing else. The past and past wrongs must have no place in their remembrance. There's Euripides, the Phoenician woman. Nobody would choose to live without friends, even if he had all the other good things. Indeed, those who hold wealth and office and power are thought to stand in special need of friends. For what is the use of such prosperity to them if they are denied the opportunity for beneficence, which is most commonly and most commendably directed towards friends? Or how can their prosperity be guarded and preserved without friends? Because the greater it is, the more precarious. In poverty, too, and in all other misfortunes of life, people regard their friends as their only refuge. That's from Aristotle. Those who are hasty in making friends are not to be approved, nor yet should you commend those who avoid friendship, for risks must be run for its sake. That's Epicurus. So those who love each other on the grounds of utility do not love each other for their personal qualities, but only insofar as they derive some benefit from each other. Similarly, with those who love one another on the ground of pleasure, because it is not for being a certain character that witty people are liked, but because we find them pleasant. So, when people love one another on the ground of utility, their affection is motivated by their own good. And when they love on the ground of pleasure, it is motivated by their own pleasure. That is, they love the other person not for what he is, but qua useful or pleasant. So those friendships are accidental, because the person loved is not loved on the ground of his actual nature, but merely as providing some benefit or pleasure. Only the friendship of those who are good and similar in their goodness is perfect. For these people each alike wish good for the other qua good, and they are good in themselves. And it is those who desire the good of their friends for the friend's sake that are the most truly friends, because each loves the other for what he is, and not for any incidental quality. And that's Aristotle on ethics again. Nice, grapevines. For that undiluted wine. Friendship dances through the world, bidding us all to awaken and give thanks. That's Epicurus. A few friends for amusement are quite enough, like a pinch of seasoning in food. So also, there is a limit to the number of one's friends, and probably this would be the largest number with whom one can be on intimate terms, because this, as we saw, is the chief factor in friendship, and it is not hard to see that one cannot be intimate and share oneself with a large number of people. Besides, they too must be friends with one another if they are all to live as a group, and it is difficult to have this state of affairs when the numbers are large. It becomes difficult even to sympathize closely with the joys and sorrows of many, because one is likely to be faced with the sharing and joy of one and the sorrow of another simultaneously. Probably then, it is well to aim at having not as many friends as possible, but only as many as are enough to form an intimate circle. Aristotle on ethics. Hospitality. Greetings, stranger. Here in our house you'll find a royal welcome. Have supper first, then tell us what you need. That's from Homer, the Odyssey, Book 1. That sounds welcoming. This stranger here, our guest. I don't know who he is, or whether he comes from sunrise lands or the western lands of evening, but he has come in his wanderings to my palace. He pleads for passage. He begs we guarantee it. So now, as in years gone by, let us press on and grant him escort. No one, I tell you, no one, who comes to my house will languish long here, heart-stricken for home. That's again Homer in the Odyssey. Looks like they get a skin there and playing the lira. Love. For the guiding principle we should choose for all our days, if we are minded to live a comely life, cannot be acquired either by kinship or office or wealth or anything so well as by love. That's from Plato. True enough. Calypso, the lustrous goddess, tried to hold me back, deep in her arching caverns, craving me for a husband. So did Circe, holding me just as warmly in her halls, the bewitching queen of Aea, keen to have me too. But they never won the heart inside me, never. So nothing is as sweet as a man's own country, his own parents, even though he settled down in some luxurious house, off in a foreign land, and far from those who bore him. It's from Homer and as the Odyssey also. The more she spoke, the more a deep desire for tears welled up inside his breast. He wept as he held the wife. He loved the soul of loyalty in his arms at last. Joy, warm as the joy that shipwrecked sailors feel when they catch the sight of land. Poseidon has struck their well-rigged ship on the open sea with gale winds and crushing walls of waves, and only a few escape, swimming, struggling out of the frothing surf to reach the shore, their bodies crusted with salt, but buoyed up with joy as they plant their feet on solid ground again, spared a deadly fate. So joyous now to her, the sight of her husband, vivid to her gaze, that her white arms embracing his neck would never, for a moment, let him go. That was Homer and the Odyssey, Book 23. You are not speaking to a woman of no character, nor to one who is ignorant of what human beings are like, that they do not take pleasure in the same things forever. Whoever takes his stand in the ring against love gets to grips with him like a boxer, undoubtedly has no sense. Love rules over any of the gods he chooses, and over me, so why not over other women like me? If my husband has been caught by this sickness, I should certainly be mad to find fault with him, or with this woman, who cannot be held responsible for anything shameful, nor for any harm done to me. That's Sophocles. But in emotional relations, the lover sometimes complains that his devotion is unrequited. It may be because he has no lovable quality. And often the beloved complains that the one who used to promise everything now fulfills none of his promises. Such situations arise when the one who loves his beloved on the ground of pleasure, and the other, his lover, on the ground of utility, and they no longer possess these attributes, because a friendship based on these motives breaks up as soon as the reasons for which the friends loved each other no longer present themselves. For it was not each other that they loved, but each other's attributes, which were not permanent. That's Aristotle from Ethics. It's an olive tree. Passion. There's an anger that goes beyond all remedy when love turns to hate. Oh, geez. The lover has a recollection of beauty, but is parted from it and cannot comprehend it. He's overwhelmed by the visible beauties as the present focus of his passion. He must be taught not to find rapture in the worship of a single body, but be guided by reason to see the same beauty in all embodied forms, and be brought to understand its incorporeal nature and higher origin, and its truer manifestation in the immaterial. He should be shown the beauty in customs and laws, as a first lesson in disembodied loveliness, and learn to see the beauty in arts, science, and virtues. Next, these forms of beauty must be brought under one principle and their source explained. From virtues, he must now ascend to intellect, or being itself. And once there, must tread the higher path. Here we go. Passion. Too much passion. No merit in that. No reputation there. Love, gentle love, is a gift of the gods. I'll settle for that. With no searing, no poison. No obsession, no pain. Control, moderation. I'll pray for them. I'll be comfortable with them. God preserve me from the madness, the affliction that is sex. Without rhyme, without reason. Affection, but not passion. It's from Euripides. I understand from you that your natural disposition is too much inclined towards sexual passion. Here come the sex bots. Moderators, be ready. Follow your inclinations, as you will provided only that you neither violate the laws, disturb well-established customs, harm any one of your neighbors, injure your own body, nor waste your possessions. That you be not checked by some one of these provisions is impossible, for a man never gets any good from sexual passion, and he is fortunate if he does not receive harm. From Epicurus. Is anyone still in here? I'm going to read this one more time. I understand from you that your natural disposition is too much inclined towards sexual passion. Follow your inclinations as you will, provided only that you neither violate laws, disturb well-established customs, harm any one of your neighbors, injure your own body, nor waste your possessions. That you be not checked by some one of these provisions is impossible, for a man never gets any good from sexual passion, and he is fortunate if he does not receive harm. And that's Epicurus. Let's continue. Parthenon. Marriage. The royal couple. Once they reveled in all the longed-for joys of love, reveled in each other's stories. The radiant woman telling of all she had borne at home, watching them there, the infernal crowd of suitors, slaughtering herds of cattle and good fat sheep, while keen to win her hand, draining the broached vats of dry vintage wine, and great Odysseus told his wife of all the pains he had to dealt out to other men and all the hardships he'd endured himself, his story first to last, and she listened on, enchanted. Sleep never sealed her eyes till all was told. In making great, that was from Homer's Odyssey, book 23. In making regulations about their partnerships, he, the lawgiver, should have regard both for the spouses themselves and to the length of life, in order that they may arrive at the right ages together at the same time, so that the period of the father's ability to beget and that of the mother's to bear children may coincide. A period when one is capable and the other is not leads to mutual strife and quarrels. Accordingly, we conclude that the appropriate age for the union is about the 18th year for girls, and for men, the 37th. With such timing, their union will take place when they are physically in their prime, and it will bring them down together at the end of procreation at exactly the right moment for both. And that's Aristotle. Can I get a 1 in the chat for that one there? And may the gods give you all your heart desires. Husband and house, in lasting harmony too. No finer, greater gift in the world than that. When man and woman possess their home, 2 minds, 2 hearts that work as one. Despair to their enemies, a joy to their friends. Their own best claim to glory. That's from Homer. All right, we're there. All right, El Perro. Cool. Yeah. I just wanted to get everyone out of the woodworks in the chat there. Had to be something. You don't have to agree with the ancient Greeks. The love between husband and wife is considered to be naturally inherent in them. For man is by his nature a pairing rather than a social creature, inasmuch as a family is an older and more necessary thing than the state, and procreation is a characteristic more commonly shared with the animals. In the other animals, partnership goes no further than this, but human beings cohabit not merely to produce children, but to secure the necessities of life. From the outset of the functions are divided, the husband's being different from the wife's, so they supply each other's deficiencies by pooling their personal resources. For this reason, it is thought that both utility and pleasure have a place in conjugal love. And that's Aristotle in Ethics. That's what they're claiming here. And they also say that the age disparity there. Some might disagree with that 20-year spread. The strongest fortress you can find, a woman and a man in partnership. Well, isn't this the biggest fear of the state? Despair to their enemies, and joy to their friend. Average lifespan during that era? Not too sure. But, I mean, even with 70, then again, you got to remember that the men were a lot more active then, so it's not like you're going to be pushing him around the wheelchair when he gets old either. The man will be useful until he dies. All right. Moderation and diligence. The lucky man's great fortune ruins his children. Good times make weak men. This was old wisdom. Is it true? Surely the father who breaks heaven's law ruins his children. The father who denies heaven's right blinds his children. The father who forgets to be humble crushes his children. Evil begets evil. But the children of the man who fears heaven, they tread with care. They care for the good. They are rewarded. Yeah, but there's no knowledge of how long Noah lived. That's, it's hearsay. It's not really, there's no evidence to that. The Greeks, we might have a little bit more evidence to their lifespan. It's a little closer in history. Okay, they're rewarded. Rich pride mounts rich pride and begets insolence. Pampered insolence begets anarchy. And anarchy, where every man is the tyrant of his own conceit, begets all-out war, striking at heaven and earth. That's interesting there. Pampered insolence begets anarchy. Anarchy, where every man is the tyrant of his own conceit, begets all-out war, striking at heaven and earth. Nice. Civilization. Why aren't they wearing masks? Modesty and self-restraint. It is not correct to speak of modesty as a kind of virtue, because it is more like a feeling than a state. The feeling is not appropriate to every age, only to youth. We consider that adolescents ought to be modest because, living as they do under the sway of their feelings, they often make mistakes, but are restrained by modesty. We also commend a modest youth, but nobody would comment an older man for being shamefaced, because we think that he ought not to do anything to be ashamed of. Aristotle in Ethics. The brash, unbridled tongue, the lawless folly of fools, will end in pain, but the life of wise content is blessed with quietness, escapes the storm, and keeps its house secure. Though blessed gods dwell in the distant skies, they watch the ways of men. To know much is not to be wise. Pride, more than morality, hastens life to its end, and they who in pride pretend beyond man's limits will lose what lay close to their hand. And sure, I count it madness, and I know no cure can mend the evil man and his evil way. Liberality is recognized as such in relation to the giver's resources, because the liberality of an act depends not upon the number of things given, but upon the disposition of the giver. And this makes him give according to his means. There's no reason why a man who gives less than another should not be more liberal. If his resources are smaller, people who have inherited their estate instead of acquiring it themselves are supposed to be more liberal, because they have not experienced shortage of money, and all people are fonder of what they have produced themselves, just like parents and poets. That's from Aristotle. All people are fonder of what they have produced themselves, just like parents and poets. Yeah. A great and exceptional thing perhaps belonged to others, to Socrates and his kind. Why then, if we are endowed by nature for such greatness, do we not all achieve it? Well, do all horses become fast? Are all dogs hunters? What then? If I lack talent, should I for that reason give up the effort? By no means. Epictetus will not be better than Socrates, but if I am no worse, that is enough for me. For I will not be Milo either, and nevertheless I do not neglect my body, nor will I be Croesus, and I don't neglect my possessions. In a word, we do not abandon any discipline out of despair of becoming the best. Interesting. Accustom yourselves to eat barley cake and to drink water, and do not take fish and wine. For the latter, like the drugs of Circe, make old men bestial and young men effeminate. A cynic. That's a pretty good one there, though. Eat barley cake and drink water. And do not take fish and wine. For the latter, like the drugs of Circe, will make old men bestial and young men effeminate. Jeez. Like too much soy. The man who goes to excess and is vulgar exceeds, spending more than he ought. He uses trivial occasions to spend large sums of money and make a jarring display. An example, by entertaining the members of his club as if they were wedding guests, and, if he is financing a comedy, by bringing on the chorus in purple robes at their first entrance, as they do at Megara. But all this he will do not from a fine motive, but to show off his wealth, expecting to be admired for this sort of conduct, spending little where he ought to spend much, and much where he ought to spend little. On the other hand, the petty man will fall short in all respects. After spending vast sums, he will spoil the beauty of the effect by some trifling detail. He hesitates over everything he does, considering how he can spend the least money, and lamenting over that, and assuming that he is doing everything on a larger scale than the occasion demands. Wow, interesting concepts here. I'm hardly a man for reckless idle anger. Balance is best in all things. From Homer. There's your Trojan horse. Good one for this comment here from El Piero, but I'll have to read it because it doesn't fit. What I demand in public servants, but listen to me first, and swear an oath to use all your eloquence and strength to look after me and protect me. Ah, beautiful saying. I say no wealth is worth my life. Damn straight, El Piero. I mean, this comes down to the heart of a lot of principles of common law, too, and equity law. So let's proceed. Good stuff, guys. Since we're all in here, I'm going to keep moving here. We regard self-sufficiency as a great good, not so that we may enjoy only a few things, but so that if we do not have many, we may be satisfied with a few. Being firmly persuaded that they take the greatest pleasure in luxury who regard it as least needed, and that everything that is natural is easily provided, while vain pleasures are hard to obtain. Indeed, simple sauces bring a pleasure equal to that of lavish banquets, if once the pain due to need is removed. And bread and water give the greatest pleasure when one who is in need consumes them. What does the saying go? Is good appetite is the best condiment. To be accustomed to simple and plain living is conducive to health. It makes a man ready for the necessary tasks of life. It also makes us more ready for the enjoyment of luxury if at intervals we chance to meet with it. And it renders us fearless against fortune. Epicurus, beautiful saying there. Let nobody tell you heaven ignores the desecrator who mocks and defiles the holy things, for they are wrong. Everywhere, the conceited man with his lofty scheme ruins himself, and everybody near him. The house where wealth cracks the foundations with its sheer weight is a prison whose owner dies in solitary. What is enough? Who knows? Once a man is the stupor of wealth and pride has broken heaven's law and kicked over the altar of justice, it is too late. Voluptuous promises, crystalline logic, caring assurances lead him, the slave, of his own destruction. While guilt burns like a fixed star, the sleepless man feels his blood and the light of his eye drained and replaced by a kind of filth. Running after pleasure, thoughtless, careless, as a boy chasing a bird. He ruins his people. He prays, but the gods are bedrock rock. And men who pity him share his fate. On moderating one's anger. Oh boy. Irascible people get angry quickly and with the wrong people and at the wrong things and too violently. But they stop quickly, and this is the best thing about them. The reason for it is that they do not repress their anger, but, being quick-tempered, vent it openly and then drop it. Bitter people are hard to reconcile and keep up their anger for a long time because they suppress their animosity. Relief comes only with retaliation, for the revenge provides release from anger by substituting pleasure for pain. In default of this, they still labor under the weight of resentment, because owning to its concealment, nobody helps to persuade the sufferer out of it, and it takes him time to digest his anger internally. People of this kind cause a great deal of trouble to themselves and their closest friends. We call people irritable if they get annoyed at the wrong things, and too much, and for too long a time, and if they are only pacified by inflicting vengeance or punishment. Boy, we've all seen some of that, huh? That was Aristotle from Ethics. The temper of a tyrant can be a fearful thing. A habit of power condones viciousness. Better the quiet life. All settle for mediocrity with peace of mind. Moderation the watchword. Ambition brings its own return. God's envy. Further to fall. That's from Euripides. Zeus is still great in heaven. He looks down on everything and has great power. Yield your excessive anger up to him. Do not forget your enemies, nor hate them overmuch. That's from Sophocles. Humor. All right. This has been a long session here, so we're going to probably wrap it up with this chapter here, and then we can continue on next time. We're like halfway through, so we've really made some progress on this book. Humor. Those who go too far in being funny are regarded as buffoons and vulgar persons who exert themselves to be funny at all cost and who are more set upon raising a laugh than upon decency of expression and consideration for their victims' feelings. Those who both refuse to say anything funny themselves and take exception to the jokes of other people are regarded as boorish and sour. But those who exercise their humor with good taste are called witty, as one might say, nimble-witted, because witticisms are considered to be movements of character, and characters, like bodies, are judged by their movements. As material for humor is ready to hand, and most people like fun and ridicule more than they should, even buffoons are called witty, as being good company, and there's a difference between the two, and not a small one, is clear from what we have said. Good one about humor. Then, in the virtues. All right, we'll end it with this. This would be a good one to leave the note on. Progress in the virtues. Where then is progress? If any of you. Now, progress means to step, forward, to move forward. Whereas, where then is progress? If any of you renounces externals and turns his attention to his moral character, cultivating and perfecting it, so as to bring it in line with nature, elevated, free, unhindered, unimpeded, trustworthy, and honorable, and has learned that whoever desires or avoids things not in his power can be neither faithful nor free. Whoever desires or avoids things not in his power can be neither faithful nor free, but must of necessity shift and fluctuate right along with them, and must subject himself to other people who can furnish or deprive him of these things. And if, again, from the time he gets up in the morning, he keeps and preserves these tenets, bathing as a faithful man, eating as an honorable man, and in every situation equally practicing his principles as the runner does when he applies the principles of running, or a singer those of musicianship. This, then, is the man who in truth is making progress and has not left home in vain. So, let's see here. Take care of your soul, but take care of the body, not body only to the degree that necessity requires, and of externals, not even that much, for happiness is not pleasure, on account of which we need externals, while virtue is complete without any externals. And that's from another Cynic. All right, so we could leave off on this page here, 71, because then we'll go on to sport, and we can move on from there. Let me just make a quick note here. I'm going to read that for you there. Give me 1 second to write down the page we're on here. It's page 71. This is sport. This is the Greeks. Okay. Let me read this out here as El Perro says, one of my favorites, progress. It pertains literally to virtues only as anything negative as it implies digression. Makes it easy, like good or bad, right and wrong. So progression is to step forward. Digression is a step down. So yeah, that's to go down. Regression is a step back. Digression you wrote there. It's not degression. Degression is a step down. Digression is a sidestep. Step around. I digress from this topic, right? You step around it, sidestep. Degress is to step to down, to move down, whereas progress is to move forward. Regress, to move back. That one will fit, I think. Almost helps me know that progress is limited to those character traits that are considered attributes. Yeah, I guess character traits and attributes are pretty much the same. Attributes are character traits if you're talking about personal attributes, that type of attribute, for the most part. But you'd have to qualify it as personal attribute in that case. But yeah, I get it. So these are all good terms we need to know, and they're all applicable all the time. When people talk about progressive in the colloquial media, it's definitely not the way it's meant to be used. Progressive means to move forward, not in move their plan forward, I should say, but to stepping forward, to take a step forward. And a lot of the ways these terms are misused in our media are they're disturbing, to say the least. But that being said, all right, so I guess that should be it for tonight. Let's see here. Yeah, regression, degression, regression, digression, progression, they're all specific for specific things. The prefix determines the stepping, right? So pro is forward, D is back, die is down, or die is side, D is down. Jeez, I can go on and on with this, but yeah, we'll go over that some other time, the prefixes, which in fact I think everybody should learn all they escape me all the time, the Greek and Latin prefixes and suffixes. They're important for us to know because just those alone tell you most of the meaning of most of our words, especially if you don't even know the word. Once you separate the suffix and the prefix, then you can isolate the root more easily. Then everything will make sense for any word. Even if you don't know it, you can almost figure them out from that alone. So yeah, that's El Perro is great with that too. The etymology of the words and understanding it to that level helps us communicate better. And like we were seeing in the preface of this book, how the Greeks, the writing style has so much impact because of the way the words are used to communicate. All right, on that note, yeah, El Perro, I have to step in for you sometimes when you're not around. Helped out Brian O'Shea after the end of his show. I had to give him some last words because you weren't there to close him out. And I wanted to keep the tradition up. So yeah, I appreciate you set the standard for that. I think we need more word wizards everywhere so that everyone kind of focuses on some of this stuff. Latin and law, they use dead languages for a reason, because they're not open for any kind of revision. They're going to stay the same so that the meanings in previous generations will be retained for posterity. That way, when they work so hard to come up with such good systems, that they can be retained. The problem is that the people that are administering the systems are perverting them. We have great systems of common law and equity law that are being perverted by the people that are executing them supposedly for the public trust. Yeah, Iliad's great, El Perro. We all need more time to read. But it's a great read. Homer's just great. But we got some great quotes. He's here more than anyone else, I think. So, and there's more to go. So we're going to have some more of this. This has been a great topic. I think we'll all be interested in doing some more of this on the next one, because it gets into some more stuff here. We've had our good background. We kind of get the timeline of where we're at, the mindset of the time, the zeitgeist, and we can see how this all applies to us even to this day. And I think that's really where we see a lot of the things that are going on in the world today are still affected by the wisdom of the ancient Greeks and the philosophies. And even our country is built upon some of these principles and philosophies. You can see them plain as day as we're reading through here. And it's only our due process that holds it together, but it's up to us to ensure that due process is being fulfilled for the people. Because if we don't, we can see what happens with the tyranny. On that note, I'd like to thank everyone for enjoying this Wisdom of the Ancient Greeks. We're going to continue on part 2 next time. And on that note, I want to ask you all to subscribe, like, and do all that good stuff so that you'll be notified next time we do this. And I'll see y'all on the next one. Peace out.